Hey, Doug Greathouse here, host of the Entrepreneur Journey podcast. And before we get into another amazing interview with an incredible entrepreneur, I wanted to invite you to the Trailblazer Mastermind community. What that community is a community of amazing entrepreneurs, just like the ones that you've seen me interview on the podcast, the 6 and 7 figure entrepreneurs. You'll get to learn from and engage with those entrepreneurs, and as well as many other entrepreneurs. We have a weekly networking event in there where you will meet the people that are seeking you and that you are seeking, meaning your next podcast guest, or if you want to be on a podcast, your clients, joint ventures, affiliates. We make those connections happen inside the Trailblazer Mastermind at the Entrepreneur Connect. We also have a monthly mastermind called the Trailblazer Mastermind. It's a feet to the fire style mastermind, meaning the goals that you have set for yourself and your business, you have a mastermind that is going to hold you accountable and help you hit those goals. You also learn what is working inside of other coaching businesses to help them grow. So that's not all. We also have the Sales Site All-in-One marketing platform, which you will get access to as a member of the Trailblazer Mastermind. It has everything that you need to grow your coaching business, from funnels, you can host your website there, social planner, email automation, SMS automation, sales pipeline, everything, literally everything you could possibly need to market and grow your coaching business is inside that platform. So you'll get access to that. There's also contests and giveaways. There's the expert training library where we have experts. If you want to launch and grow your podcast, if you want to write a bestseller, those experts are going to be inside of the mastermind, and you can learn from them and grow. And in addition, not last but not certainly not least, there's the Raise Your Revenue course, the course by me and my team that we put together to help you hit your 5-figure consistent months in your business and then grow from there. So this is a roadmap to get you to that first 5-figure month, lay the proper foundation, and you can grow from there. So there's so much more. Go check it out. It's at mastermind.salesite.com, and I hope to see you on the other side. All right. Hello, everyone, and we are live on Facebook and for another episode of the Entrepreneur Journey, and I am so pleased to have Brian. Can you say your last name for me? Because I know I'm going to kill it.
I almost feel like I should let you try on that one. No, my last name is Pickowicz.
Pickowicz. That's what I was going to say. All right. So I am so thrilled to have Brian Pickowicz. Brian, we just met just a few days ago. Maybe it was last week, but I am just blown away by everything that you've got going on in your world and everything that you do with fitness and helping people. I've been following your content since we talked, and the way that you help people is just blows my mind. So anyway, we're going to get into that. But can you kind of give a brief, we'll go into your story and your expertise a little later, but can you kind of give a brief introduction of who you are?
Yeah. So first off, thank you so much for the warm intro. I really appreciate that. And I think that for me, it's understanding that, I think that for Lindsay and I, what we say is there's a lot of people on the internet and we try to be the ones that are who we say we are. So we like to lead by example. We like to lead into authenticity. And I think that our mission at the Fitness Project, which is the company that we started together, is to help build fit, healthy leaders. So we've been in coaching now for almost 8 years. I started when I was in college. I started as a personal trainer even before then. And it's always been about finding better ways to help people change. And what we know about fitness is when we're stronger, when we're healthier, when we take better care of ourselves, it permeates in everything else that we do. And so for us, we really lean into helping business owners and professionals, people who are usually taking care of everyone else, find habits and skills and techniques that really help them give back to themselves. So they can contribute more, they can give more, they can be better. And it's really that stepping stone to everything that we do in life.
What entrepreneurs really want to do more than anything is build impact. So basically what you're saying is you help them be able to deliver more impact.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So Tony Robbins talks about the 6 human needs, how there's significance, certainty, variety. There's also love and connection, growth, and then contribution. And some entrepreneurs, right, they do it for significance, right? Some people, you don't get an entrepreneurship because you want certainty. That's for sure. But the problem is that a lot of times we handle certainty with our food, right? The way we get certainty is by handling our certain habits, right? Like how we eat or how we take care of ourselves. doesn't mean it's healthy, but at least gives us some certainty to know that, hey, if I'm handling stress, I can go to a glass of wine, or if I'm having stress, I can go and eat. I don't really have to think about it. For us, we know that our clients really value growth. Like that's the thing that they want, because the growth is the result that they're chasing right now, and the contribution's coming. Because contribution happens in scales, right? Like we can contribute to our customer today, but we can also contribute to our team today. But a visionary entrepreneur is someone who's thinking, how do I contribute 10 years from now? What's the real lasting impact I want? What's the legacy? So for us, we know that a lot of the people that we're meeting, it's like they're striving for that next level, right? They've seen really great success up to this point, but it's that next level that they just know things have to change. And usually that starts with changing ourselves, right? We think oftentimes, oh, I need a new strategy. Well, maybe you need a new strategy. Maybe you need to go back to the source and really work on yourself. And it doesn't mean you have to go and work out 6 days a week, or you have to get shredded. It's just putting the right habits in place so that you're returning to your source, so that every day you're putting little things in the path that allow you to be stronger, better.
Oh, so good. We're going to dive even more into that in just a little bit. But I like to start these interviews off with some fun questions. And since you're kind of in that physical fitness space, I want to ask you, what is your favorite exercise?
Ooh, that's a great question. Exercise has been interesting for me because I started out as a bodybuilder. I played college football. I was a pitcher in high school. So I had experience as an athlete. And then when I got into college, I was too weak to actually make the college football team. So I said, hey, I don't want to be the guy who looks back in 20 years and is hanging out at a bar and says, oh, I could have been really great. I was really great in high school. I wanted to be the person who showed up and did the thing. So I really started weight training. I started getting into bodybuilding. I ended up walking onto my team and making it. Left after 3 semesters, started competing in bodybuilding and did really great. But halfway through that experience, after moving to Los Angeles and pursuing the whole journey, I ended up getting really into running. And so that's my way of saying, I've run ultra marathons, I've run marathons, I've also competed bodybuilding. So there's a lot of types of exercise that I could pick from that I think my answer, and this is going to sound like a interesting answer, but it will make more sense. I think it depends on what I want to feel.
Okay.
If I want to feel like, if I'm really paying attention, I'm feeling anxious or stressed that day, the best thing for me to do first might be to do yoga or stretch, like do something that levels out my cortisol, something that's going to level me out, or even do some steady state zone 2 cardio on a bike and just really level myself out. That's helpful there. If I want something that's like adrenaline push, I'm going to go do some runs. I'm going to get out and do a long run and push myself. If I want to feel powerful and strong, I'm going to go do some deadlifts. I'm going to do something that's giving me that source. So I think that from a physicality standpoint, or more from a physiology standpoint, I would always pick a deadlift for my favorite. I would pick a squat for functionality. But I think more so, it would really be the question, like, what do I need in this season? Like, do I need to spend some time by myself and figure some things out? I'm going to go and run. Do I need to get my confidence back and get my edge back? I'm going to go and do some hard strength training. So that's kind of how I would answer that.
Wow. I didn't expect to get this deep so early in the conversation, but this follow-up question is going to make sense when I say getting deep. Tony Robbins also speaks of changing your state, right? A lot of times we'll be in a mood and in a way. And one of the things he says is listen to music, right? Listen to some kind of music that'll change your state, because music will change your state. What you're saying is you can actually even do one better than that and change your state physically, right? Change it to where, if, like you said, if you're feeling anxious, do something that will make you less anxious. A physical thing. If you want to start feeling powerful, maybe you have a line of sales calls about to come in, and you want to feel powerful and kind of build up your own authority, right? And going and doing those deadlifts. That was a really good answer. I didn't expect that so early in this interview.
Yeah, well, I think that when you ask the question, why am I doing something, right? So the end result of any behavior is the reward we receive, right? So when you think of the actual way that habits form, you have a cue, craving, action, reward. And it's actually interesting. The actions we take, whether that's to reach for the trail mix and stuff our face, or that's to go for a walk, to yell at an employee, to sit and be silent for a moment and think. Each one of those actions is giving us some kind of reward. There's some conceived reward or some concept of a perceived value that we're going to receive from that action, right? So I perceive that by saying, hey, you just need to go and do this, I'm going to get my way, or it's going to make me feel powerful. It's going to make me feel significant. I'm going to be able to get the outcome that I want, where that might not be the actual action I need to take, but there's a perception of that reward, if you will. And so when it comes to any action, right, whether it's walking, meditating, going and doing deadlifts, we're really just trying to feel something, right? There is a physical health component, and that's the reward of the reward. But it's so important that we start to build a sense of, we'll say, what's called interoception, awareness of what's happening inside of our body about how any given action makes us feel. And if we can understand that, we can ask, is this leading to the result that I want or not? And when you're feeling weak, like if I show up on this call, on this podcast, and I'm feeling low and weak, if I just allow that to persist without taking a different action, I'm going to show up here and I'm going to feel differently. The same way as if I'm going and talking to my team and I'm having all these negative thoughts and I don't do something that actually changes the way that I'm feeling that day, or if I don't set myself like in a positive frame of mind beforehand, whether it's in the morning or even just before the call, then I'm never really interrupting the pattern. And I think that what we see with habits is that there's certain habits that we can put in place that impact everything else. So if we can start to change how we're feeling or put new mechanisms in place, then it will start to change the way that we're showing up in every area of life.
Wow. Thank you again. These are supposed to be the fun questions, but we're getting deep. So let's go into the next one. What's your favorite non-physical activity?
Ooh. I mean, I love spending time with my fiance. That's not just a answer to get brownie points. It's something I really enjoy, just being present with her and having coffee in the morning. I love spending time with our dog, even though sometimes he gets, a little rambunctious, but that brings me a lot of joy. I'm a big fan of music. So guitar, listening to classic rock, analyzing what the artist is actually trying to say. So maybe a little bit more philosophical by nature. And then the last thing I would say is I'm pretty passionate about politics, not necessarily in the way that I think that politics has moved since social media has emerged. I don't enjoy forums where you can't talk to someone in person and understand what they're actually thinking and remove some of the emotion that I think social media trains us to. But I studied politics in college, and I had a deep amount of experiences that allowed me to better understand the way that people perceive the world and the way they think that the world should be run, and then take my ideas, and then we kind of start to form better ideas together. And I think that that's the ideal. So those would be kind of the baseline of the things I would do outside of business.
I have some follow-up questions even on that. So classical music, or not classical music, but classic rock. Do you have a favorite artist or band from that era?
Oh, favorite band would be challenging because kind of similar to what I said about actions, certain music is listened to for certain reasons. I grew up in a town of about 750 people in the middle of New Hampshire. And it was common practice for us to have a family barbecue. And everyone would bring, my dad was a really great musician and his brothers played guitar. So every night there'd be campfire songs, right? And a lot of Lynyrd Skynyrd, a lot of maybe we'll say that southern or softer rock, kind of classical rock. I think of, you have the Marshall Tucker Band, you have Lynyrd Skynyrd, you had some Pink Floyd in there, just acoustic music. That's one frame of reference. my grandfather was obsessed with John Lennon and the Beatles, and I really didn't start to listen to the Beatles until I was 27 or 28. So I'm 29, so it's been kind of a newer thing, but I found that was a way to connect with him, is really understanding that music. And then for myself, I love more, we'll say modern rock, so 90s, 2000s, even 2010, more pop punk rock. That's kind of my era.
Okay.
But my dad used to be he's a musician, and I played guitar as well. And he told me, if you want to get great at guitar, you got to start in the 60s, go to the 70s, go to the 80s. You can't just play in what era is now. So that kind of informed my musical taste as I was listening to Van Halen and Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath and Metallica. So it's almost like picking the best out of every generation and trying to pour that into myself.
Nice. Pearl Jam? You like Pearl Jam?
I love Eddie Vedder.
Yeah.
I think Pearl Jam's great. The challenge I have with Pearl Jam is that after 10, the album consistency as far as the quality is not as high, but there's always a few gems like Better Man or Elderly Woman Sitting Behind a Counter in a Small Town. Like those are two of my favorite songs of all time.
Okay. Yeah. Some bands do peak like that. I saw Pearl Jam live, and it was one of my favorite concerts I ever saw. So, let's move on. So, best hike you ever been on?
Best hike I've ever been on. I took a hike with my brother in New Hampshire through the White Mountains. In 2020, my grandfather had passed away at the beginning of the pandemic, not from COVID, but just he had a heart condition. He passed away at the beginning of the pandemic, but we didn't have a funeral service for like 4 or 5 months. And when I went home, I'm living in Dallas now, so I went to New Hampshire. My brother went for a very long, like 5,000, 6,000 foot hike. And just being able to get outside and connect, especially after that much time away, that was probably my favorite hike. Are you a big hiker?
I love to hike. I don't do it enough. It's much like my golf game. I don't get to play golf enough. I love it. But both I love hiking and golf.
Love it. Yeah, I definitely need to work on my golf game myself. It's embarrassing sometimes.
Yeah,
but
it takes consistency, like a lot of things, right?
Yep, exactly.
So, all right. So this, I did not realize how fitting this question would be when I came up with them. So, what is your most unbreakable habit?
Ooh. My most unbreakable habit. That's a really good question. The one that I would say is the hardest for me, and I work on it consistently, is not biting my fingernails. So
okay.
That's like the negative is just me being a human. Is it's such a pattern of just being a little uncertain and just starting to do this and feeling that desire, that urge, that craving. I've worked a lot on reworking and breaking that habit, but that would be probably the one that's innate, that is not the positive one that I've built, that is just there. And I think a lot of the things I talk about are the experience of having to change some of those habits and patterns, like how I handle anger, how I handle anxiety, how I handle stress. They're all just habits. And so the more we can pay attention to the habit and really understand what's going on, why we're doing it, building more awareness, maybe of the thoughts, the emotions that are driving us, the more we can start to take different actions. And then for me, beyond that, I would say the most unbreakable habit that I've built is just movement. I don't care if it's walking or if it's stretching or going to the gym and getting a really hard workout. That's a cornerstone of my life at this point. And I can't imagine, even if things, I got injured, which I've been injured before, but something was to happen and I couldn't train the way that I wanted to, I would adapt and find a new way to move.
Okay. I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer to this next question. It's a follow-up question. Do you feel it's easier to break a bad habit or to gain a new good habit?
Certainly easier to gain a new habit. And what people want to do is they want to start to analyze what the outcome is that they want, right? What's the long term or the aspiration? and then start building small habits that influence them away from their, we'll say, unhealthy habits. Because we have this thing called automaticity. Automaticity. And what happens is essentially when we're receiving these rewards, they get wired into our brain, right? So we perceive that there's going to be this reward that happens, and that gets wired into our neurons. And over time, it just becomes automatic, right? It's 12 p.m. It's time to eat. I don't even know why. It's just that's my daily calendar. It's the way my body works. So to unwork that, you have to build new pathways. You have to fire and wire new neurons together. So if I want to influence the way that I'm living, I want to have a bad habit broken, I need to have something to replace it. Because the only reason why I'm performing any given action, like I said at the beginning, is to receive something. It's a reward. So let's say, for example, I am stress eating in the middle of the day, right? Something stressful happens and I go to food. Well, the reward isn't I eat food. The reward is relief. The reward is a momentary state change of peace, or I can focus on something else. I get the dopamine hit, obviously, but I can focus on something else other than, oh my God, that employee is upset with me, or a customer just yelled, or they say that they want us to offer them a refund, and there's all these things breaking. The thing I'm seeking is relief. And so what I need to be mindful of is understanding the reward that I'm seeking and then change the action. Because I can't change the urge. I can't change how I feel in this given moment. The only way I can change how I feel is if I change what I do. Mm-hmm. So the feeling is going to happen automatically. Customer comes in and complains. You feel something. There's going to be a perceived reward at the end of any given action. So if I want to start to change my behavior, I want to start stacking better habits in place that shift me towards where I want to be. And that can be as simple as starting your morning off with a walk. Or if I start my morning off with a walk, then that leads me to think, okay, hey, I've already spent some time by myself. I've done something healthy. And then I can start to build maybe a healthier routine around my food. If I build a healthier routine around my food, I'll probably feel less bloated, less tired, less lethargic. Therefore, I'm going to work better. And if I work better, I'll probably be less stressed. Right. And so these habits they're called keystone habits, but we want to start putting small habits in our life that influence us towards something better. And I think that that's the 20% effort that creates 80% of your results. And then as you start to do that, you can work more on, let's say, what's called identity-based goals or identity-based habits, and start to change the way you perceive yourself.
Wow. Never before, I think this is a record, has there been so much value delivered in the beginning, getting to know you questions as there was in this interview. So
I appreciate that.
If you're watching this live, that's a bonus. And we're going to get into some more expertise in just a minute. But I want Brian to share his story of entrepreneurship. Kind of give us, I know it could be long, so give us just the cliff notes, kind of how you got started, any kind of transitions that happened along the way that were pivotal, and to where you are now.
Yeah. And I hope that I'm not steamrolling people with all this information, trying to tie it all in and be concise. But I think that it's more of understanding some of these processes and patterns that aren't just simple answers, but they're also not complex solutions. My entrepreneur journey, though, started when I was in college, and I had worked 3 jobs while I was in school. I was getting ready for bodybuilding. I was studying at the same time. So I grew up in a small town. And when I was about 12, my dad got sick with MS. So even though he was a really hardworking person and my family was really hardworking, we didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have a lot of, we'll say, financial means to pay for college. So I started working full time when I was going to school. And as I was working, I read the 4-Hour Workweek. And I was like, oh, wow, like, hey, maybe I can do something outside of this job that will lead me towards something bigger for myself. I'd always had a passion for doing things differently. And I was in a band when I was in high school, which is kind of its own, artistic and business venture, if you will, if you think of it that way, because you're creating something. But I remember reading the 4-Hour Workweek, and simultaneously I was getting in shape for my first competition. So I was 250 pounds. I ended up losing 60 pounds in about 9 months to do my first contest. And I was posting about it in social media. And this was in 2015. So before people usually were really leveraging social media for their business, I had already kind of started that. And as I was posting content, people started asking me for advice. And I was like, well, I have a nutritional advisor certification. Obviously, I know what I'm doing when it comes to training. What if I could personally train people and start the process and meet them where they're at and just start, building out this little practice? And my logic was, well, I can either get an internship my junior year and work for someone else, or I can test out this business thing. And a lot of people started asking me for advice. So I said, hey, let's talk to the local gym and see if I can do some personal training. And what was amazing was as soon as I launched it, I was booked out for the summer. So I had like 15, 12 clients, whatever, for the whole summer. I was like, wow, like not only am I getting to do something that I love, I'm getting to help people, but this was like the whole amount I was going to make in the summer working for this job times 3 or times 4. And I was just like, wow, like I can actually do something for myself. I can work for myself. So there's all these small wins. And it was so exciting to see all the clients I was working with and see them succeed. And I was like, okay, this might be something different. I went back to school my senior year and kind of just kept testing it, little things. I started trying online programs or whatever. And then when I got to graduation, I had this flexion point where I was trying to decide what the right move was. I had actually received a job offer from Tesla, and it was a job offer to go be one of their lead salesmen in Boston for their new car. Like they were opening up a store, they needed sales reps, and they're like, hey, we'll pay you $75,000 to go and move to Boston. And as a college student, I was like, wow, like, that's really good. That's great starting money.
Yeah.
But I sat with it and said, well, if I'm already getting this opportunity now and I'm 23, 22 or whatever, isn't it making more sense to take a risk on something that I really want? Like, doesn't it make more sense? Because the job I can always go back to, but I will always look back and say, I could have done this. Like, why didn't I take the risk? Why didn't I leave? So I decided to go into the online space because none of the gyms around me would let me train clients in their gym. They said, oh no, you have to work for us. And that meant I had to split the profits. They'd get 60, I'd get 40. One of my friends was doing online coaching. This is in 2016. So still really, really green. There's no one in the space. It's a completely blue ocean, if you will. So I got into it. I moved away from my home. I rented a room in a small house, and I went all online. And what was amazing is it started to work. And my clients started to succeed, and I was able to coach people, and just things started to move. And I was blown away because I had proof of concept. Like, this is actually happening. Then as the business was growing, me and my fiance, we decided that we wanted to move to Los Angeles. So we moved to Los Angeles in 2017, and we kept building everything online. And that was its own challenge because now we're in space. So we had to learn ads, and we had to learn how to sell across the internet. And there was this challenging thing because even though I was online, I was still spatially connected. But now I was in this new space of trying to figure it out. And there was a lot of learning curves that came with that experience and a lot of anxiety. You went from paying $650 for a room in a house to paying $2,500 for a one room in an apartment, But what was amazing is we were in LA and we were competing in bodybuilding, and we were pursuing this bigger vision. And it was always one of my dreams to do that. What ended up happening though, is I decided to step away from bodybuilding. I didn't really feel like it was a long tail success, mostly because I looked at what was happening to people's health. And I also looked at the people I was helping. And I said, well, I don't really want to turn out like these bodybuilders who are having to take a lot of drugs, having to put their health on the line for not a lot of money, because there's not a lot of money in bodybuilding, and B, just the longevity aspect. I want to live beyond 50. I want to have a long life that's enriched and able to have all these experiences. And it didn't really seem like a good payoff if I was going to go down that path. But then again, like most of my clients just wanted to be healthy and lose some weight. Like they wanted to see themselves get healthier. They didn't care about being 4% body fat. And as I started to narrow in on how I wanted to help people, I was blessed with this massive opportunity that shifted everything that I did. Because one of the clients that I'd worked with had always talked about, hey, I have this really successful brother. I have this really successful brother. He has this really successful business in Dallas he built from scratch. And the client I was working with had kind of acted as a pseudo mentor for me. He had sold a successful business for like 50 million. He was like, hey, here's some of the steps you got to be thinking about. Here's some of the things you got to do. And he'd been guiding me ever since I left New Hampshire. But he told me about his brother, and I never really thought much of it. I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like, obviously, he's really successful. Then when we came home one summer, I met his brother, and I ended up meeting him. And he walks into this house that we were staying at, and he's like, my name's XYZ. I've been really thinking about having someone come live with me. And he handed me Jesse Itzler's Living with a Seal, which is Jesse Itzler brought David Goggins to come live with him. And he's like, I've really been thinking of having someone come and do this for me. And I looked at him and was like, that's really weird because I could totally do that. Like I could completely do that. And he's like, that's funny. And then Lindsay and I had gotten engaged. We're throwing a little barbecue at this lake house that he lived by. And he stopped by. He's like, hey, I just want to show the house. I think he owned it actually, and he was just renting it out to us. But he's like, I just want to show the house. And he was like, his friend was there. And he looked at me, he's like, he's just subtle. He's like, I've really been thinking about having someone come live with me. So it was one of those moments where you realize that there was an opportunity in front of you that you just had to take. Mm-hmm. I told Lindsay, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. There's nothing else that we can get that will be like this. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. We have to take it. And we leaped at it. We built him an offer. We built him like what the program would be. And he said, deal. So we moved from Los Angeles to Dallas. We lived with him and his family and worked exclusively with them for about 2 months in their home. And then I became his one-on-one coach and trainer for on and off about 1.5 years. COVID happened and that caused some constraints and some different things happened in there. But yeah, he became not only a great client of mine, but a great friend and a mentor to me too. And then off of that, we built the business that we're in now, whereas instead of having our 2 practices, we're building a company together. And that's really been our focus for the last almost 4 years.
Nice. Wow. I've been listening very intently, and I have some follow-up questions. Well, maybe not even questions, but ways that we can dive in deeper. So it's funny how a book, I've been trying to pick out the pivotal moments in your story, and the book, you picked up a book at a very young age. The importance of reading and reading good books, right? You got the 4-hour work week, and that changed your mindset about your direction, right? So that's one of the things I picked up on. And being young, this is something that I think I might have talked to someone else on the podcast about. You have much more leeway with risk when you're younger before you start that family and everything else. So you took advantage of that because you knew you could risk a little bit when you're younger and see how it all turned out before you have the weight of a family and other things on you, right? So that was also key. And then the last thing was being open for opportunity, right? Always having your eye out for opportunity, which you did, and you saw it and you took it. So I don't know if there's any questions in there, but
well, the thing I would say is it was so terrifying at first. I remember being on the flight to go and live with the family, and I was so full of anxiety because this guy could hire anyone. He could hire anyone. He could pay any amount of money, any sum of money that he needed to in order to get the best in the world, and it's me. So it's not necessarily imposter syndrome, but I think that I have a healthy skepticism of where my limits are, meaning I need to really make sure that I show up and deliver. And I had an opportunity to interview Donald Trump when I was in college, and I had met Arnold Schwarzenegger when I was in LA, and I had met some successful people. So I had a pulse on how to show up in an environment like that. But when you're living in someone's home who is that successful, I didn't grow up that. I didn't grow up. It's not just that rich people. I think that there's a notion that rich people are the way they are because they have so much. I think rich people have so much because of the way they are. And there's a different way of thinking that someone who is at that level is operating with. Like the first day I asked him, like, how do you separate all this? Like, how do you maintain? He's got over 3,500 employees. He owns 100% of the business. It's him from scratch. He started when he was 29. He's built it over the last 25 years. How do you maintain your composure? He's like, I'm very good at compartmentalizing everything. And what I would watch him do is he would be handling a situation on his phone, handling a stressful situation, and he could come back. Handle, come back. Handle, come back. Excuse me. And there was a lot of subtleties that I picked up on his behavior, the way he thought about the world, the way he consumed information. And the first thing he says, I'm not on social media. There's no way you'll catch me on that. And his example was, I protect my mind more than anything else because this is the most important thing. I do not allow people or information or emotions or thoughts to enter my brain that I do not pick. I'm very intentional with what happens in my space. And as soon as someone or something happens that crosses the line, I remove it. It's very easy for me to make decisions because I know what needs to be in place in order for me to operate at my best. So for me, 26, I grew up, we weren't a desolate family, but we didn't have a lot of money. We lived in the middle of nowhere. I didn't know what it was like to live in a household like that. It was different. It required a lot of growth. And there was a lot of mistakes I also made at first with handling that relationship because I just didn't know. I didn't know how to handle the conversations at first. I didn't know how to handle my relationship with him, but it was incredibly fruitful for both of us. And I know based off of the length of time we worked together, based off the exchange that we had, that it brought a mutual value because I was just there to serve him, which when you're at that level, most people want something. Mm-hmm. Everyone wants something. Everyone wants to do something to you, or they want what you have, which for me, I was really mindful to not do that. Just respect and be there to serve.
Wow. Awesome. Sound like he had a lot of clarity about who he was. And there was another word I was looking for, and a lot of discipline. He had a lot of clarity and discipline. And I'm sure a lot of that got passed on to you.
Well, in some ways, yes. He had a lot of discipline. We were sitting down one day and we were having coffee. The things that have influenced me the most were the lessons he taught me about wealth. We're sitting one day having coffee. And he's like, Brian, you know how you look at calories? He's like, you know how you look at calories? Like, oh, well, if you put cream in your coffee, that's probably 35 calories. And, if you have, 5 cups of coffee, maybe you're going to have, 350 calories that day. It's a lot of calories. I look at dollars that way. I ask myself, out of every dollar I spend, that's 1 out of 100. And Warren Buffett was his biggest item. So and I've read Warren Buffett's biography, and it's the spitting image of everything he used to say. But he's like 1 out of every 100. Most people don't actually respect their bank account; they spend it. So a lot of people tell you like, "Oh, I'm a 7-figure entrepreneur," but they're making 40 grand because they're not focused on profit. They're focused on telling people how much money they make.
Yeah.
All these little examples were him subtly teaching me. And I share that because he had so much discipline in this one area that he couldn't have discipline in the other areas. Mm-hmm. So that's why he hired me, because he didn't have a lot of discipline with his food. He didn't have a lot of discipline with his body. He needed someone else that he could outsource that to, who would hold him accountable. And I'll share this one example. I think this is where, like, when it comes to meeting people where they're at, when we talk about building new habits, this is a prime example, I think, that most coaches get wrong for business owners, or even like mothers or people who are professionals who have a family. they think, so the coach thinks or treats the client like they should be doing what they do. So if I'm running an ultra marathon, it's like, well, everyone else should be a runner. Or if I'm training 6 days a week, everyone else should be training 6 days a week. And there's this high bar that's set. For him, there's like span of like 4 weeks where he's like, I really want to train 4 days a week. I really want to get this done. And things exploded in the business. All this pressure, all these things that were happening. And he just was canceling. He had to travel here, he had to travel there. He had some reluctance to me traveling with him. I think that was one of his, things he was really comfortable with, is having that time by himself. So he didn't want to have that happen, but he only worked out like once or twice of the weeks or the sessions that he said per week, even though he wanted to do 4. And personally, that kind of pissed me off. Like, I was like, hey, you're telling me you want to do this, and I'm showing up for you. I'm at your house and doing this, and you keep canceling. Like, I'm not the kind of person I'm not a drill sergeant. That's not the way I function. I function out of mutual respect. So I'm going to tell you the truth, but I'm also going to meet you where you're at, and we're going to try to find a solution together, because forcing someone to change is not a very productive system to lasting change. And I remember just telling Lindsay, like, hey, I'm frustrated with this, but I know that I need to give him space. And I know that I need to, see how this is all going to turn out. Just keep showing up. And towards the end of the month, he started turning around, and he told me, he's like, I just want to really thank you for not making me feel judged or making me feel bad about myself for not showing up. And I knew, I was like, that's going to cause him more stress, because he's already stressed. He's already challenged with this. And as a result of that single moment, he worked out consistently for another 3 months. But it was the matter of getting through the sticky point. And that's why I say a lot of trainers and coaches don't meet people where they're at. And a lot of business owners don't meet themselves where they're at too, because they're trying to compare themselves to the people who are really successful because they're really successful. It's like, your life is different than everyone else's. It doesn't matter if you're a business owner or not. Everyone's life is different. So you have to meet yourself in your life, and you have to build the right habits for you. And what I call it is living above the line. You need to have a foundational habit that keeps you healthy. And you can have aspirational goals that are above that line that you're attacking and you're doing consistently that get you real, like, great results. But you have to have the line set first, which might be walking or hydrating or just having a healthy lunch. And I think that that's where a lot of people fail, is they're so stuck in comparison or judgment that they're not able to meet themselves, or they have people who are influencing them that don't actually have their best interest at heart. So they have theirs. They want them to do what they're doing.
That was so good. And what was coming up in my mind as you were speaking that is this imagery of someone jumping, like there's a bar and someone trying to jump to hit that bar, and they just need to build the steps to get up to the bar, right? Sometimes they need those steps, and they're thinking they need to jump to the bar.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a great example. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, awesome. So that was a great story. I love everything you had to say there. Let's dive into a little bit more about your expertise. Can you tell us the secret to building a healthy lifestyle?
I alluded to it a few times throughout this, so I'll try to simplify it. The first thing is know what you want as a result for yourself, understand the purpose, and then start to associate the impact it will make for the rest of your life. If you say, I want to lose 15 pounds, ask yourself, why is it important that I do this? And then how is that going to impact the other areas of your life? For a lot of people, they have conflicting values. Or if you think of someone who's not healthy right now and they want to get healthy, they don't really value their health yet. They have, we have 5 core. Some people say 3 core values, but you can build them out to 5. But for a lot of professionals, they value their career, they value growth, they might value contribution, but they value time with their friends, travel, experiences. Maybe there's some level of, variety in that, financial freedom, right? Wealth, success, you name it. But the problem is that we only have so much time and energy. And if you value, let's say, growth, success, or growth, financial freedom, family time, you value travel, and you value, let's just say, variety, right? You want to have, like, food is variety for a lot of people. Well, you have to find a way for health to become one of those values. And then you have to associate that health gives you growth in one of those other areas. So you have to add it to your list of values. But the problem is, a lot of times we take away something that we value, like family time, or we think that fitness is going to take away from our financial success because we're not going to work as hard. And it creates conflict. And if there's conflict in our values, we're going to go to what we value most. And for a lot of people a lot of people who want to be career driven, it's success, it's wealth. And then a lot of people who have families tied into that. It's like those two things are taking, and then my relationship, right? All these things are going to take up that space that being healthy would. So a good example would be if you say, oh, I want to be healthy, the purpose is going to make me live longer. And that's going to impact my children. So I've linked two values that allow me to get leverage on myself so that when I'm struggling, I can remember, hey, I'm being healthy for my kids. I'm being healthy for my business, my employees. They need me to be healthy. And the second thing is, once we know what we want, we have a purpose behind it, and we've been able to associate the impact that's going to make in our other areas of life, we can kind of build a bridge, if you will. The second thing I want to focus on for most people is build, like I said, build the foundational habits, because you're not going to always be perfect. You're never going to be perfect, in fact. And things are going to change. Your life's going to change. So how can we build a foundational core habit or routine or a way of living that allows us to at least make progress or maintain a higher quality of life? If I can, let's say, do 2 strength training workouts a week, or walk for 15 minutes a day, or drink, another 30 ounces of water than I'm typically drinking, that is going to influence me more than the days, the motivation swing of getting extremely motivated and pushing myself for 6 days a week and then falling off for 3 months. So I think that the key is knowing what you want, understanding why it's important, associating the impact, and then building the small habits. Just building the small habits. And then if I was to put one last stake in it, I would say you have to bring people into your circle who can positively influence you. Because we all know that we're the sum of the people that we surround ourselves with and we associate with. And if you don't have results with your health, if you don't have results with how you're taking care of yourself, you should also audit your friend group. And it might not be you have to remove people, but maybe you have to put people in the right circle. One of the things that was, like I said, like I moved in with someone. And I'm not saying everyone has to do that. You could start changing the people that you're listening to. You could change the social media feed. You could read a book. You could hire a coach. You could just start going to the gym. There's a bunch of healthy people there, at least people who are trying to get healthy. Like everyone, the gym is the greatest place in the world for personal growth because everyone there is trying to get better. Everyone that shows up at the gym in some way is trying to get better. And it's such an amazing place to be. Even if, the first time I went to the gym, I was filled with anxiety. I had no idea what I was doing. I dropped the barbell on my chest and I left in embarrassment. But it was a place that I could go that I knew I was getting something from, even if I failed. So I think that the last piece would be you have to get someone in your corner to help you be more in alignment with living a healthy life.
Yeah, I love that. Real quick follow up, and I don't know if I'm going to say it as a statement or a question, but would you say the better habit is actually just getting into the gym rather than what you do in the gym? Because just getting to the gym is a stronger habit than whatever you do inside of it. Would you say that?
James Clear in Atomic Habits talks about the value of making things easy, simple, and rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
The point that he brings up when he talks about changing your habits is that the habit you're building should take less than 10 minutes to perform. And that might be putting shoes on, right? And getting out the door. That might be filling your water bottle, packing a healthy lunch, just walking down to your basement and stepping on the treadmill, right? I think that the idea that you have to have motivation is a lie. you have to know what you're going after. And that's where motivation intrinsically comes from, is having a perceived future reward. But motivation also comes from movement. And so getting into the habit, showing up at the gym. Motivation will find you on the run. Motivation will find you in the gym. It will find you in the moments where you're doing the behavior. So I would completely agree. It's just a matter of finding the small habit that influences the bigger action.
Nice, love it. Something I know that you're also key on is energy management, right? Because we accomplish more with more energy. I'm a bigger proponent of energy management than time management. Yes, time management is important, but can you just speak on energy management from your perspective?
Could you clarify the question a little bit so I can understand?
Okay, I'm just going to give you an example. So for me, I try and accomplish the bigger after I work out in the morning. I try and accomplish the bigger things in the first part of the day because I know that's when my energy is the highest, right? And the things that aren't as important later in the day when my energy is lower. So that's just kind of an example for me. And a lot of people, they'll do these mundane little tasks in the morning and then realize that they haven't done the big things at the end of the day and they don't have energy to do it.
Yeah, so I would build off of understanding your 20% efforts that create 80% of your results. I know for myself, even when we talk about, so yeah, I'm a one-on-one coach. We have our coaching practice in the Fitness Project where our coaches are coaching our team, and Lindsay and I are the head coaches. So as our business is growing, I have to wear the coach hat and I have to wear the CEO hat. And it's not always obvious what is the 20%. It's not always obvious what are the things that really matter today, because there's things that happen inside the business and there's things that happen on the business. And if I'm not clear, then my energy can go towards the simple mundane tasks because there's this idea that someone else needs it. There's this idea that it's more important because it's the pressure's on now. I share that because I think that it's really vital that we know what our biggest stones are, right? And it comes down to the keystone habit, understanding that if you do one thing well, it tends to impact everything else well. But knowing what your big stones are for your growth, it's going to allow you to actually use your time wisely. Because what you'll find is the energy that you spend, if you think of, let's say you have a creative task, or you're reworking your marketing or your sales funnel, something like, and that requires this creative energy. You're going to be able to work more efficiently if that's the first thing you do than if you do that at the end of the day where you've already depleted all your creative juice. You've already expended all of your energy. So I think that you want to manage your time, but you certainly want to be able to understand what are the biggest stones. That's kind of, I would be in agreement with that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So do you have anything that you believe is a misconception that most people have about the health and fitness industry?
The idea that there's good and bad food. And I say that not because there's not food that impacts us negatively and food that impacts us positively. But I think that anytime it's black and white, it's a really good opportunity to examine the facts. And also, when you talk about good or bad food, it's a spectrum. And you have to be able to understand what good means for you versus what good means for me. If you're someone who has a poor relationship with food and you stress eat and you turn to food as an outlet for managing your emotions, the best thing you can do might not be to go on a keto diet or a cleanse diet. The best thing you could do might be to substitute a healthier option, or to cut down the portion, or to eat more mindfully. Or maybe you keep the food there and you just have one healthy meal that day. And that starts to inform you on the other decisions that you're making. So I think that black and white, there's good food and there's bad food. And if I eat bad food, therefore I am bad, or I've fallen off, or I'm all out. Anytime we're in those two camps, it's oftentimes the case that we would benefit from analyzing ourselves and asking what progress looks like for our body, for our goals, based off of our current habits.
Take that step, right?
And that burpees are a good exercise.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Burpees are garbage.
Okay.
Well, you think about the goal of exercise is to be functional with what you're going to do in life. I hope I haven't triggered you, Doug.
No.
But how many times are you going to have to jump to the ground, squat up, and leap as high as you can for as many reps as possible? It's functional to be able to get to the ground, sit up and jump. You might do that once or twice. Yeah, that's completely fine. So having the ability to do it. But if I'm 250 pounds or 300 pounds and I'm just getting started in the gym, my body is not functional to do that movement yet. And even if I am healthy, what is the point of this exercise? What am I receiving from it? It has a very low effectiveness and efficiency level for what we need for our body. We should be able to jump. We should be able to hit the ground. We should be able to squat. We should be able to move. But to say I need to do 5 rounds of 10 burpees in 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and that's going to be my workout. I think what it is it's this perception that we need to sweat and we need to feel like we're working out really hard in order to get something from it. And that's just not the case for something like that exercise. Yeah, HIIT cardio is great. Running is great. Sprinting is great. Squatting and feeling strong and feeling like, I could only do 8 reps and I really pushed myself. Like, that's great. But the idea that burpees are an efficient exercise for obtaining those results is just false.
All right. Awesome. Well, no, I'm not a burpees partaker. I don't do burpees. The only thing I could think of where that might be a little applicable is maybe if you're a basketball player, because you're doing a lot of similar motion.
But there's more optimal movements for increasing the body's ability to jump, leap, land. And I'll say this, like, I'm not a sports specific trainer, but your explosiveness out of a burpee is not optimal, especially when you're getting to the top of your ranges. And that's where people usually get hurt, right? Like, they'll get hurt doing the 10th burpee. The first 2 or 3, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's like, yeah, if you do a functional exercise like that, it's not going to be the end of the world. But doing them once your form breaks down, once it's obvious that you cannot do them anymore, you're not getting, like, athletes aren't doing burpees.
Right.
Yeah. And if they are, it's because they're running with their teammates and they just, got off sides and they now are being punished by the coach.
Yeah. It's for discipline, not for training.
Yes, precisely.
Well, thank you, Brian, for a great interview. I know you have something for the audience to check out. So if you could tell us how to find out more about you and what you have to offer.
If you're looking to learn more about health, habits, how to start to better yourself in this journey of getting fit and healthy, Lindsay and I have a podcast called Conquer the Day where we share fitness, nutrition, mindfulness practices from not only ourselves, but some of the top coaches in the world. And so we'd really love you to check out that podcast. And that's really the best place to connect with what we're doing consistently. And then you can find me on Facebook, my regular name, Brian Pickowicz. And I'm always open to connecting, sharing, and just learning how to support you.
Awesome. We'll put the link to, if you don't mind, your Facebook profile below in the show notes, and also the link to the podcast below. And if you check out the podcast and you like it, please subscribe to this podcast. And of course, reach out if you need help in the area of just making more an impact through bettering your health, because it all starts, that's the foundation, right? It all starts there, in your mind and your body. Everything else comes from that. So thank you again, Brian. I do have one last question that I ask every single guest, and that is if you have any inspiring or any words for our entrepreneurs.
The best thing I would say, advice is know your P&L.
Very good. Yeah. Yep.
I think that's more important than inspirational words.
Or have someone on your team that you trust a lot that knows the numbers, right?
Precisely. Well, and Yeah, I'll leave it at that. That was the biggest piece of advice from Scott.
All right.
That was the biggest piece. So that's what I would say, and that's what I've used too.
Nice. Well, thank you again, Brian. And until next time, entrepreneurs, keep moving forward.